A toddler noticed a German shepherd limping with a broken rope around his neck. What baby did next? Left. Everyone in tears. What you are about to listen to will leave you speechless. A moment of pure innocence that changed lives forever and revealed a shocking truth no one saw coming. If you think you know where this story is headed, think again. The truth behind this rescue will break your heart and then put it back together. Like, share, and let us know where you're listening from. The morning sun filtered through the trees of Maple Hollow, casting dappled shadows across the single-story blue cottage at the edge of the town. Inside, Emma Morgan ran her fingers through her tangled hair and took a deep breath before pouring her first cup of coffee. The rich aroma filled the small kitchen, momentarily drowning out the sounds of cartoons playing in the living room, where her 5-year-old son, Tyler, sat cross-legged on the carpet. Emma watched him from the doorway, her heart swelling with a familiar mix of love and worry. Tyler's honey-blonde curls caught the light as he rocked slightly, completely absorbed in the colorful animation. His small hands occasionally fluttered with excitement, but no sounds escaped his lips. "Good morning, sunshine," Emma said, kneeling beside him. Tyler turned, his enormous blue eyes meeting hers. A smile spread across his face, wide and genuine, but silent. He raised his hand and touched her cheek in greeting. This was their routine. Every morning, Emma would greet her son, hoping to hear his voice. And every morning, she was met with loving silence. The specialist had called it selective mutism, compounded with speech delay. Tyler understood everything. His comprehension tests had shown that clearly. But at 5 years old, he had spoken barely 20 words in his life. The pediatrician had assured Emma that with continued therapy, Tyler would eventually speak. But eventually felt like forever to a single mother who had never heard her child call her mommy. "Hungry?" Emma asked, making the sign for food with her hand. Tyler nodded enthusiastically and followed her to the kitchen, his small bare feet padding across the worn wooden floor. As he climbed onto his chair, a small toy fell from his pajama pocket, a carved wooden wolf, smooth from constant handling. It had been his father's last gift before the accident 2 years ago. Emma placed a bowl of cereal in front of him and kissed the top of his head. The scent of baby shampoo mingled with the smell of coffee and toast, creating the familiar fragrance of their mornings together. "Ms. Paula says you're making progress," Emma said, sitting across from him. "She told me you pointed to all the animal pictures correctly yesterday." Tyler's face lit up. He reached for his communication tablet on the table and pressed several buttons. The electronic voice spoke, "I like animals. I want to see real animals." Emma smiled. The tablet had been a game changer, allowing Tyler to express more complex thoughts than his limited speech or basic sign language permitted. Still, the computerized voice was a poor substitute for the sound she imagined her son's voice would be, warm and bright like his father's had been. "Maybe we can go to the zoo next weekend," Emma suggested, but Tyler was already shaking his head emphatically. He pressed more buttons on his tablet. "Forest. Want to walk in forest." Emma hesitated. The forest trail behind their neighborhood wasn't dangerous exactly, but it wasn't a manicured park either. Still, Tyler rarely asked for specific activities, and the speech therapist had encouraged Emma to reward his communication attempts. "After breakfast," she promised, "we can take a short walk on the trail." Tyler's entire body seemed to vibrate with excitement. He ate his cereal with unusual speed, milk dribbling down his chin in his haste. 20 minutes later, Emma had managed to get them both dressed for the cool spring morning. She packed a small backpack with water, snacks, Tyler's tablet, and a first aid kit, a habit from her nursing days that she couldn't shake. "Ready for our adventure?" she asked, helping Tyler tie his shoes. He nodded, bouncing slightly on his toes. There was something different about him this morning, an intensity to his excitement that Emma couldn't quite understand. Typically, Tyler was methodical and calm, not prone to the kind of bubbling anticipation he was displaying now. "Remember the rules," Emma said as they stepped outside into the crisp morning air. "Stay where I can see you. No wandering off, and if I call you, you come right back." Tyler nodded solemnly, then took her hand. His palm was warm against hers, tiny fingers curling with complete trust around her own. These were the moments that melted Emma's heart, the silent communications of love that needed no words. The path to the forest trail began just 2 blocks from their cottage. As they walked, Mrs. Finley waved from her garden. "Good morning, Emma." "Hello there, Tyler." The elderly woman's voice carried across her well-tended roses. "Beautiful day for a walk." Emma waved back. "It is. Tyler wanted to explore the trail today." Mrs. Finley's eyes twinkled as she looked at Tyler. "Well now, young man, keep your eyes open. I saw a family of rabbits near the trail entrance yesterday. They had babies no bigger than my fist." Tyler's eyes widened with interest, and he tugged gently on Emma's hand, urging her forward. "Someone's eager," Mrs. Finley chuckled. "Have fun, you two." The forest trail began with a simple wooden sign marking the entrance. A dirt path wound between tall pine and oak trees, disappearing around a bend about 50 yards in. Birds called to each other overhead, and the morning sunlight streamed through the branches in golden shafts. "Remember, just a short walk today," Emma said. But Tyler was already moving forward, pulling her along with unusual determination. The path was quiet that morning, no other hikers or joggers in sight. The weekend crowd usually came later, leaving this peaceful interlude for early risers like them. Emma breathed deeply, enjoying the scent of pine and damp earth. These moments of tranquility were rare in her busy life of work, therapy appointments, and single parenting. Tyler walked ahead, occasionally stopping to examine interesting rocks or watch squirrels chase each other up tree trunks. His face was alive with curiosity and joy, making Emma glad she'd agreed to this outing. About 10 minutes into their walk, something changed. Tyler stopped so suddenly that Emma nearly bumped into him. His small body went rigid, head tilted as if listening to something Emma couldn't hear. "Tyler, what is it, sweetie?" Emma asked, kneeling beside him. Tyler didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on something off the trail, deep in the underbrush to their right. He lifted his arm slowly, pointing with such intensity that Emma felt a chill race up her spine despite the warming day. "What do you see?" she whispered, following his unwavering gaze. At first, Emma saw nothing but dense foliage, fallen branches, and shadows, but then, a movement. Something shifting in the undergrowth about 20 feet from the trail. Something too large to be a rabbit or a fox. Tyler tugged at her hand, then released it. Before Emma could stop him, he stepped off the path toward whatever had caught his attention. "Tyler, wait!" Emma called, her heart suddenly pounding. "Remember the rules. Stay on the path." But Tyler didn't stop. For the first time in his life, he was deliberately disobeying her. There was something almost trance-like about his movement, purposeful yet dreamlike, as if he were being drawn by an invisible thread. Emma hurried after him, pushing aside branches and stepping carefully over fallen logs. Tyler moved with surprising agility through the undergrowth, ducking under low-hanging branches and navigating around thorny bushes with ease. "Tyler, please stop," Emma called again, trying to keep the panic from her voice. And then, suddenly, he did stop, so abruptly that Emma nearly crashed into him again. She reached for his shoulder, intending to turn him around and lead him back to the safety of the trail, lecture ready on her lips. But the words died in her throat when she saw what Tyler was staring at. Partially hidden beneath a fallen tree, lying in a patch of mud and decaying leaves, was a dog. A large dog, a German shepherd with matted fur so dirty that its original color was barely discernible. A broken rope hung from its neck, frayed and filthy. One of its back legs was clearly injured, held at an unnatural angle. The animal's ribs showed prominently through its dull coat, and its eyes, amber pools of pain and wariness, tracked their movement with exhausted vigilance. "Oh my God," Emma whispered, instinctively pulling Tyler back. Despite her nursing background, she knew wounded animals could be unpredictable. "Tyler, we need to step back slowly." But Tyler wouldn't budge. Instead, he shook his head firmly and pulled against her restraining hand. "Dangerous," Emma said firmly, signing the word as well. "The dog might be scared and hurt. Scared animals sometimes bite." Tyler finally turned to look at her, and what Emma saw in his eyes took her breath away. There was a certainty there, a knowledge that seemed far beyond his 5 years. He tapped his chest with conviction, then pointed at the dog. "Help," he said aloud, his voice a rusty whisper from disuse. "Help him." Emma froze in shock. 2 words. He had spoken 2 clear words aloud, more than he had strung together in months, and he had called the German shepherd him without any way of knowing the dog's gender from this distance. As Emma hesitated, torn between the miracle of her son's words and her concern for their safety, Tyler took advantage of her momentary distraction. He slipped from her grasp and moved toward the injured animal with slow, deliberate steps. "Tyler!" Emma hissed, afraid to shout and startle the dog. The distance between her son and the wounded animal closed with each tiny step Tyler took. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs as scenarios flashed through her mind. The dog lashing out, those powerful jaws closing around Tyler's small arm or face. She moved forward to grab him, but something about Tyler's approach made her pause. There was nothing threatening in his posture, nothing sudden in his movements. He approached the dog the way he approached everything, with quiet, careful attention. The German Shepherd watched Tyler come closer, amber eyes wary but not aggressive. Its tail remained still, neither wagging in welcome nor tucked in fear. When Tyler was just 3 feet away, the dog lifted its massive head slightly, nostrils flaring as it scented the air. Emma held her breath, every muscle in her body poised to leap forward and snatch her son away at the first sign of danger. Tyler stopped an arm's length from the dog. For a long moment, boy and animal regarded each other in profound silence. Then, with infinite gentleness, Tyler extended his small hand, palm up, fingers slightly curled, exactly the way Emma had taught him to greet new dogs. The German Shepherd's gaze shifted from Tyler's face to his outstretched hand. A soft whine escaped its throat, the first sound it had made. Slowly, painfully, it stretched its neck forward until its dry nose touched Tyler's fingertips. Emma watched in astonishment as her silent son and the wounded animal formed a silent connection that transcended words. Tears pricked at her eyes, though she couldn't have explained exactly why. Emboldened by the dog's acceptance, Tyler moved closer and, with the same careful deliberation, placed his small hand lightly on the dog's muddy head. The German Shepherd closed its eyes, and a shudder ran through its emaciated body. Not from fear, Emma realized with wonder, but from relief. As if those gentle fingers had somehow communicated safety after what must have been a long and painful ordeal. A single tear escaped Emma's eye and tracked down her cheek as she watched her speech-delayed son connect effortlessly with this wounded creature. There was something so pure, so profoundly sacred about the moment that she didn't dare interrupt it with words or movement. Tyler turned to look at his mother, his blue eyes shining with purpose. He held her gaze steadily, then spoke again, his third and fourth words of the day. "Need help." And in that moment, as the morning sun filtered through the trees and cast dappled light on her son's determined face, Emma understood that something extraordinary had begun, something that would change their quiet lives in Maple Hollow forever. Emma's nursing instincts kicked in as she crouched beside Tyler and the wounded German Shepherd. The dog's breathing was shallow, and she could see old blood caked around its injured leg. The broken rope around its neck was embedded so deeply into the matted fur that it had created raw wounds beneath. "Okay, sweetie," Emma whispered to Tyler, her voice barely audible. "I need you to stay very still while Mommy looks at the doggy." Tyler nodded solemnly, but didn't move his hand from the dog's head. The German Shepherd's eyes remained closed, as if drawing strength from the gentle touch. Emma pulled out her phone to call for help, but the screen showed no signal bars. They were too deep in the woods for cell service. She looked around desperately, weighing their options. The dog was clearly in distress, but it was also massive, probably weighing close to 80 pounds even in its emaciated state. "We can't just leave him here," Tyler said suddenly, his voice stronger than before. Emma stared at her son in shock. Not only was he speaking in full sentences, but he was speaking with a conviction she had never heard from him before. The change was so dramatic it made her dizzy. "Tyler, how did you—" she began, but stopped herself. Questions could wait. Right now, they had a life to save. The German Shepherd opened its amber eyes and looked directly at Emma. There was intelligence there, and something else, a desperate plea for help. The dog's tail gave the faintest wag, as if it somehow understood that rescue had arrived. "Can you stand up, boy?" Emma asked gently, extending her hand for the dog to smell. The German Shepherd tried to lift its head higher, but winced in pain. Its injured leg was definitely broken. Emma could see that now. The bone wasn't protruding through the skin, but the angle was all wrong. Tyler stood up slowly, never breaking contact with the dog's head. "His name is Max," he announced matter-of-factly. "How do you know that, honey?" Emma asked, surprised by her son's certainty. Tyler shrugged, a gesture that seemed far too mature for his 5 years. "He told me." A chill ran down Emma's spine. Tyler's newfound ability to speak was miraculous enough, but this claim of communication with the dog was unsettling in a way she couldn't quite explain. "We need to get him out of here," Emma said, pushing aside her confusion. "But he's too heavy for us to carry." Tyler considered this problem with the same intense focus he applied to everything else. Then he pointed to a patch of bare ground nearby. Drag him. Emma followed his gaze and saw what he meant. If they could somehow slide the dog onto something, they might be able to pull him back to the trail. She looked around and spotted her lightweight rain jacket tied around her waist. "Good thinking, Tyler," she said, untying the jacket, "but this isn't going to be big enough." As if on cue, the sound of rustling leaves made them both turn. An elderly man emerged from the undergrowth, wearing a faded green jacket and carrying a walking stick. His silver beard was neatly trimmed, and his blue eyes held the kind of wisdom that came from decades of outdoor experience. "Trouble?" he asked simply, taking in the scene before him. "We found this injured dog," Emma explained quickly. "I'm a nurse, and I can see he's in bad shape, but we can't get him back to the trail alone." The man nodded and approached slowly, allowing the German Shepherd to see and scent him. "Name's Frank," he said. "Been hiking these woods for 30 years. Haven't seen you folks around here before." "Emma Morgan, and this is my son Tyler," Emma replied. "We live in Maple Hollow." Frank knelt beside the dog, his practiced eye taking in the animal's condition. "This fellow's been through hell," he murmured. "That rope around his neck has been there for weeks, maybe longer. And look at these paws. He's traveled a long way to get here." Tyler watched Frank examine the dog with the same serious attention he gave everything else. "Max is scared," Tyler said quietly, "but he knows we want to help." Frank glanced at Tyler with interest. "Max, is it? How do you know his name, young man?" "He told me," Tyler repeated, as if this were the most natural thing in the world. Frank studied Tyler for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Sometimes animals and children understand each other in ways adults forget how to," he said. "I've got an emergency blanket in my pack. We can use it as a stretcher." Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her. Frank moved with the efficiency of someone accustomed to wilderness emergencies. He pulled out a lightweight but strong emergency blanket from his hiking pack. "Here's what we're going to do," Frank explained, unfolding the silver blanket. "We'll slide this under him as gently as possible, then the three of us can drag him back to the trail." The process was delicate and heartbreaking. The German Shepherd whimpered softly as they moved him, but he didn't snap or try to bite. Instead, he kept his eyes fixed on Tyler, as if drawing courage from the boy's presence. Tyler stayed by the dog's head throughout the entire process, whispering soft words of comfort. "It's okay, Max. We're going to help you. You're safe now." Emma's heart swelled with pride and amazement. Her quiet, delayed son was showing more empathy and communication skills in this moment than she had seen from him in years of therapy sessions. Once they had the dog positioned on the emergency blanket, the real work began. The German Shepherd was heavier than Emma had estimated, and the forest floor was uneven and littered with obstacles. Frank took the lead position, Emma positioned herself at the rear, and Tyler walked alongside the makeshift stretcher, never taking his hand away from the dog's head. "Easy now," Frank called out as they navigated around a fallen log. "Slow and steady." The journey back to the trail felt endless. Emma's shoulders burned from the strain, and sweat dripped down her back despite the cool morning air. Several times they had to stop to rest and readjust their grip on the blanket. During one of these breaks, Tyler looked up at his mother with serious eyes. "Max had a family," he said quietly, "but they hurt him." Emma exchanged a concerned glance with Frank. "What do you mean, sweetie?" Tyler frowned as if searching for the right words. "Bad people. They tied the rope too tight and left him in the dark place." Frank's expression darkened. "Son, how do you know this?" Tyler shrugged again, that same mature gesture. "He showed me. In my head." Emma felt that chill again, stronger this time. Her rational, medically trained mind wanted to dismiss Tyler's claims as childhood imagination, but there was something in his eyes, a depth of knowledge that seemed impossible for a 5-year-old. "We should keep moving," Frank said quietly. "Get this fellow to a vet as soon as possible." They resumed their slow progress through the forest. With each step closer to the trail, Emma noticed changes in both Tyler and the dog. Tyler's speech was becoming more fluid, more natural, as if some internal barrier was dissolving, and the German Shepherd, despite his obvious pain, seemed to grow calmer and more alert. "Almost there," Emma encouraged as much for herself as for the others. When they finally emerged onto the main trail, Emma could have cried with relief. Frank helped them position the emergency blanket stretcher more securely for the walk back to civilization. "My truck's parked at the trailhead," Frank offered. "I can give you folks a ride to the nearest veterinary clinic." "Thank you," Emma said gratefully. "I don't know how we would have managed this without you." Frank waved off her thanks with a gentle smile. "Sometimes we're just in the right place at the right time. Besides, your boy here was the one who found him. Takes a special kind of heart to spot suffering and choose to help." Tyler beamed at the praise, but his attention quickly returned to Max. The dog's breathing had stabilized somewhat during their journey, and his eyes were more alert now, tracking their movements and responding to Tyler's gentle touches. As they made their way down the trail toward Frank's truck, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that this morning had changed everything. Not just because Tyler was speaking, though that miracle alone would have been enough, but because of the way he was speaking, with confidence, with purpose, with a maturity that seemed to have appeared overnight. And then there was the matter of his supposed communication with the dog. Emma had worked in pediatric nursing long enough to know that children often projected their own feelings onto animals and toys, but Tyler's descriptions had been too specific, too detailed for pure imagination. "Max is getting stronger," Tyler announced as they walked. "He says the pain is less now that he knows he's safe." Frank glanced down at the boy with renewed interest. "Is that right? What else does Max tell you?" Tyler was quiet for a moment, his small face scrunched in concentration. "He's looking for someone who loved him before the bad people." Emma felt her throat tighten with emotion. Whether Tyler was truly communicating with the dog or simply displaying incredible empathy, his words painted a picture of loss and hope that tugged at her heartstrings. "Well then," Frank said gently, "I guess we'd better make sure Max gets healthy enough to keep looking." As they approached the parking area where Frank's beaten-up blue pickup truck waited, Emma realized that their quiet morning walk had transformed into something she could never have imagined. Her silent son was speaking. They had rescued a suffering animal, and somehow, in the space of an hour, their small family had grown by one furry member. But as Frank lowered the tailgate of his truck and they prepared to load Max for the trip to the veterinary clinic, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that their adventure was far from over. Tyler's mysterious connection with the dog, the animal's obvious history of abuse, and the strange circumstances of their discovery all pointed to a larger story yet to unfold. Tyler climbed into the back of the truck beside Max, his small hand never leaving the dog's head. "Don't worry," he whispered. "Everything's going to be okay now." And as Emma climbed into the passenger seat, she found herself hoping that Tyler's words would prove prophetic, because something deep in her gut told her that the hardest part of their journey was still ahead. The veterinary clinic on Elm Street buzzed with the usual Saturday morning activity: dogs barking, cats yowling, and the constant hum of worried pet owners in the waiting room. Dr. Sarah Chen emerged from an examination room, her dark hair pulled back in a professional ponytail, white coat pristine despite the morning's chaotic schedule. "Emma Morgan?" she called, scanning the crowded waiting area. Emma stood, Tyler beside her clutching his tablet. Max had been taken straight to the back for emergency treatment an hour ago, and the waiting was killing her. Tyler hadn't spoken a word since they'd arrived at the clinic, his newfound voice seeming to retreat as soon as they'd been separated from the dog. "How is he?" Emma asked as they followed Dr. Chen down a sterile hallway. "Stable, but in rough shape," Dr. Chen replied, her voice professional but kind. "The break in his leg is clean. We can fix that. But he's severely malnourished and dehydrated. The rope embedded in his neck caused some nasty infections. He's been on his own for weeks, maybe months." They stopped outside an observation room with a large window. Through the glass, Emma could see Max lying on a padded table, an IV line running into his front leg. His fur had been partially cleaned, revealing patches of the rich golden-brown coat beneath the dirt. Tyler pressed his small hands against the window, his breath fogging the glass. "Max is sad," he whispered. "He misses his person." Dr. Chen glanced at Emma with raised eyebrows. "Your son seems very attached to him." "Tyler found him in the woods," Emma explained. "He's been different since then, more talkative." What she didn't mention was how Tyler had spent the entire truck ride to the clinic whispering to Max, apparently carrying on a one-sided conversation that somehow seemed anything but one-sided. "Well, children often have special connections with animals," Dr. Chen said diplomatically. "Would you like to visit with him? It might help with his recovery to have familiar faces around." Tyler nodded eagerly, and Emma found herself agreeing despite her lingering concerns about the intensity of her son's attachment to the dog. Inside the observation room, Max lifted his head weakly when he saw Tyler approach. His tail attempted a wag, and Tyler's face lit up with joy. "He says thank you," Tyler announced, gently placing his hand on Max's paw, "for saving him." Dr. Chen watched this interaction with professional interest. "Has your son always been this intuitive with animals?" Emma hesitated. "Not exactly. Tyler has had some delays with speech and social interaction. This is actually the most he's talked in, well, ever." "Fascinating," Dr. Chen murmured, making a note on her clipboard. "Sometimes trauma or significant emotional events can trigger breakthroughs in children with communication challenges." As if responding to their conversation, Tyler looked up from Max and spoke directly to Dr. Chen. "Max says there's something wrong with his chip." Dr. Chen blinked in surprise. "I'm sorry, what chip?" Tyler pointed to Max's neck area. "The tiny thing under his skin. It hurts him, and it makes the bad people able to find him." Emma felt that familiar chill creep up her spine. "Tyler, honey, what are you talking about?" "All dogs have chips," Tyler explained patiently, as if talking to someone who didn't understand obvious facts. "But Max's chip is different. It's not supposed to be there." Dr. Chen set down her clipboard and looked more carefully at the dog. "Well, let's take a look. It's standard procedure to scan for microchips anyway." She retrieved a small electronic scanner from a nearby cabinet and powered it on. The device beeped as she passed it over Max's neck and shoulder area. "Interesting," she murmured, frowning at the scanner's display. "There is a chip here, but the registration number is unusual." Emma leaned over to look at the scanner. Instead of the typical pet registration numbers she'd seen before, the display showed a complex alphanumeric code, K9EX7741, classified. "I've never seen a chip ID like this," Dr. Chen said, her voice troubled. "This looks more like a government or military designation." Tyler nodded solemnly. Max was a police dog, but not the regular kind, the special kind that helps with scared people. "Tyler, how could you possibly know that?" Emma asked, her voice sharper than she intended. Tyler looked at her with those unnaturally wise eyes. "He remembers. He shows me pictures in my head." Dr. Chen and Emma exchanged glances over Tyler's head. The veterinarian cleared her throat diplomatically. "Well, regardless of his background, Max needs several weeks of recovery time. The leg surgery went well, but he'll need to stay here for at least a week for observation and treatment of the infections." "Can we visit him?" Tyler asked, his voice small and worried. "Of course," Dr. Chen assured him. "In fact, I think he'd benefit from regular visits. You seem to have a calming effect on him." As they prepared to leave, Dr. Chen pulled Emma aside while Tyler said goodbye to Max. "Mrs. Morgan, I have to ask, have you considered having Tyler evaluated by a specialist? The level of connection he seems to have with this animal is remarkable. It could indicate some form of enhanced empathy or even what?" Emma interrupted. Dr. Chen looked uncomfortable. "Some children on the autism spectrum display heightened sensitivity to animals and their emotional states. But Tyler's communication seems more direct than that, like he's actually receiving specific information rather than just reading body language." Emma watched Tyler whispering earnestly to the sedated German Shepherd. "You think something's wrong with my son?" "Not wrong," Dr. Chen said quickly. "Different. Special, perhaps, but definitely worth investigating." That afternoon, back in their cottage, Emma sat at her kitchen table with a cup of cold coffee, staring at her laptop screen. She'd been researching everything she could find about microchips in dogs, military and police canine units, and unusual behavior in children. Most of what she found was routine information about pet identification and law enforcement dog training. But buried deep in a forum for military families, she'd found something that made her blood run cold. A post from 3 years ago by someone with the username KNhandler23 described a classified program involving enhanced tracking capabilities in military dogs. The post mentioned experimental chips that could monitor not just location, but biological and neurological data. The program had supposedly been discontinued after reports of adverse effects on both the animals and their handlers. Several dogs had died under mysterious circumstances, and handlers had reported strange psychological symptoms, increased aggression, paranoia, and in some cases, complete mental breakdowns. Emma closed the laptop with shaking hands. It was probably just conspiracy theory nonsense, she told herself, But the microchip in Max had been like nothing Dr. Chen had ever seen, and Tyler's sudden behavioral changes. "Mommy?" Tyler's voice interrupted her spiraling thoughts. He stood in the kitchen doorway, holding his carved wooden wolf and looking smaller than his 5 years. "What is it, sweetheart?" "Max is scared," Tyler said, climbing onto her lap. "He says the bad people might come looking for him." Emma wrapped her arms around her son, inhaling the familiar scent of his shampoo. "Tyler, you're safe here. We're both safe." Tyler pulled back to look at her with those two wise eyes. "Max says the bad people don't want him to be happy. They want to hurt him again because he ran away." "Who are these bad people, Tyler?" Emma asked gently. Tyler was quiet for a long moment, his small face scrunched in concentration. "Men in dark clothes. They smell like fear and anger. Max was supposed to help them, but they made him do bad things to scared people." Emma's heart started pounding. "What kind of bad things?" "Find people who were hiding, people who were afraid. Max didn't want to, but the chip made him do it. It hurt when he didn't obey." Emma set Tyler gently aside and reached for her phone. Her hands were shaking as she dialed the veterinary clinic. "Elm Street Animal Hospital, this is Jessica." "This is Emma Morgan. I brought in a German Shepherd this morning. Max, I need to speak with Dr. Chen immediately." "I'm sorry, Mrs. Morgan, but Dr. Chen is in surgery. Can I take a message?" Emma looked at Tyler, who was now sitting on the kitchen floor, apparently having a silent conversation with his wooden wolf. "Tell her it's an emergency. Tell her I need to know everything about that microchip." After she hung up, Emma found herself pacing the small kitchen. Tyler's conversations with Max were becoming more detailed and more disturbing. Either her son had an incredibly active imagination, or he was somehow accessing the dog's memories. Both possibilities terrified her. The phone rang 20 minutes later. Dr. Chen's voice was tense when Emma answered. "Mrs. Morgan, I've been trying to research that microchip. I contacted the manufacturer using the ID number, but they claim no record of that chip exists." "What does that mean?" "It means either their database is incomplete or that chip was never supposed to be officially registered. I also tried running the ID through law enforcement databases, but I got a message saying the information is classified." Emma sank into a kitchen chair. "Dr. Chen, I think we might be in trouble." "What do you mean?" "Tyler's been saying things about Max's past, about people who might be looking for him. I know it sounds crazy, but—" "Mrs. Morgan," Dr. Chen interrupted, her voice urgent, "there's something else. About an hour ago, a man came to the clinic asking about a German Shepherd that was brought in today. He claimed to be from animal control, but his credentials looked off." Emma's blood turned to ice. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. I told him we had no record of any German Shepherds being admitted today. But Mrs. Morgan, he knew about the microchip. He specifically asked if we'd scan the dog for experimental identification devices." The phone slipped from Emma's suddenly numb fingers, clattering onto the kitchen table. Tyler looked up from his spot on the floor, his blue eyes wide with fear. "Mommy," he whispered, "Max says they're coming." Outside, the sound of a car engine could be heard pulling into their driveway. Emma rushed to the front window and peered through the curtain. A black sedan with tinted windows sat in front of their cottage, its engine still running. Two men in dark suits stepped out of the car and began walking toward their front door. Tyler appeared beside her, pressing his small body against her leg. "They smell like the bad people," he whispered. "They want to take Max back." Emma's protective instincts kicked into overdrive. She grabbed Tyler's hand and pulled him toward the back door. "We're going to Mrs. Finley's house," she whispered urgently. "Right now. Don't ask questions, just run." As they slipped out the back door, Emma could hear the men knocking on the front door. Their knocks were firm, official, and somehow menacing. Hand in hand, Emma and Tyler ran across their small backyard toward the safety of their neighbor's house, leaving behind the peaceful morning that had started with a simple walk in the woods. But as they reached Mrs. Finley's back door, Tyler looked over his shoulder at their cottage and spoke words that chilled Emma to the bone. "Max says this is just the beginning." Mrs. Finley opened her back door before Emma could even knock, her wrinkled face creased with concern. The elderly woman had obviously seen them running across the yard. "Emma, dear, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Can we come in?" Emma asked breathlessly, glancing back toward their cottage. "Please, Mrs. Finley, there are men at our house and I don't think they're friendly." Mrs. Finley stepped aside immediately, ushering them into her warm kitchen that smelled of cinnamon and fresh bread. Of course. Tyler, sweetheart, you look pale. Sit down at the table." Emma positioned herself by the kitchen window that faced their cottage. The two men in dark suits were still at the front door, but their knocking had become more insistent. One of them was talking on a cell phone, while the other peered through the front windows. "Mrs. Finley," Emma said quietly, "I need to ask you a huge favor. Can you watch Tyler for a little while? I need to make some phone calls, and I don't want him to hear." "Certainly, dear." Mrs. Finley looked between Emma and Tyler with sharp eyes that had seen 8 decades of life. "But, Emma, are you in some kind of trouble?" Before Emma could answer, Tyler spoke up from where he sat at Mrs. Finley's kitchen table. "The bad men want Max. They hurt dogs and made them do mean things to people." Mrs. Finley blinked in surprise. In all the years she'd known Tyler, she'd never heard him speak so clearly or at such length. "Tyler found an injured dog this morning," Emma explained quickly. "We took him to the vet, and now these men are looking for him. I think the dog might be stolen or something." It wasn't the whole truth, but it was all Emma could manage without sounding completely insane. Mrs. Finley nodded slowly. "Well then, Tyler and I will have some hot chocolate while you handle this business. Won't we, young man?" Tyler looked at Mrs. Finley with those serious blue eyes. "You have a nice heart," he said simply. "It glows warm like sunshine." Mrs. Finley's expression softened with wonder. "What a beautiful thing to say, Tyler. Thank you." Emma stepped into Mrs. Finley's small living room and called Dr. Chen again. This time, the veterinarian answered immediately. "Mrs. Morgan, thank goodness. That man came back with 2 others. They're demanding to see Max, and they have some kind of official-looking paperwork, but something doesn't feel right about this." "Don't let them take him," Emma said urgently. "Whatever you do, don't let them near that dog. They're claiming he's government property, that he escaped from a federal facility. They say they have legal authority to reclaim him." Emma's heart sank. "Dr. Chen, I think Max was part of some kind of secret program. My son has been saying things about experiments and hurting people. I know it sounds crazy, but—" "It doesn't sound crazy," Dr. Chen interrupted. "After you called earlier, I did some more digging. I found reports of a classified program called Project Empathy that was shut down 3 years ago amid animal cruelty allegations. Dogs were being trained to track people by their emotional states: fear, stress, trauma." Emma felt sick. "And Tyler can somehow access Max's memories of this?" "I don't know how, but Tyler described details that weren't in any public reports. Mrs. Morgan, I think you and your son might be in danger. These men aren't just here for the dog. They're asking about you and Tyler, too." Through Mrs. Finley's front window, Emma could see that the black sedan was still in her driveway, but the men had returned to their car. They appeared to be waiting. "I'm going to move Max to a secure location," Dr. Chen continued. "I have a friend who runs a wildlife rehabilitation center outside town, but you need to be careful. These people clearly have resources." After hanging up, Emma returned to the kitchen where Tyler was quietly sipping hot chocolate while Mrs. Finley bustled around, clearly trying to act normal despite the unusual circumstances. "Tyler," Emma said gently, "I need you to tell me everything Max has shown you, about the bad people and what they did to him." Tyler set down his mug and looked at her with those unnaturally wise eyes. "Max lived in a cold place with lots of cages. There were other dogs there too, but most of them got sick and went to sleep forever." Mrs. Finley gasped softly, her hand flying to her throat. "The people in white coats put things in their heads," Tyler continued matter-of-factly. "Tiny machines that hurt when the dogs didn't do what they wanted. Max was supposed to find scared people and make them more scared." "How did he make them more scared?" Emma asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Tyler frowned, concentrating. "The machine in his head could smell fear, and when he found scared people, he was supposed to growl and chase them until they told secrets." Emma felt nauseous. They had turned dogs, creatures naturally inclined to help and protect humans, into instruments of psychological torture. Mrs. Finley sat down heavily in her chair, her face pale. "Dear Lord, those poor animals." "Max got away when they moved him to a new place," Tyler continued, "but the rope around his neck was connected to a machine that was supposed to shock him if he ran too far. He chewed through it, but it hurt him really bad." Emma knelt beside Tyler's chair. "Sweetheart, How long has Max been showing you these things? Since we found him, Tyler replied, but the pictures are getting stronger, and now he's showing me other things too. What other things? Tyler looked directly at Mrs. Finley. He can see the warm glow around people's hearts. Mrs. Finley's is yellow like butter, yours is red like roses, and mine is silver like stars. Mrs. Finley reached over and gently touched Tyler's hand. Tyler, you're a very special little boy. Tyler nodded seriously. Max says the machine in his head is broken now, so he can't be forced to hurt people anymore, but it still lets him see the heart glow. That's how he knew we were safe. Emma's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and felt her blood turn cold. Unknown number. We know you have the dog. Return government property within 24 hours or face federal charges. This is your only warning. She showed the message to Mrs. Finley, whose eyes widened with alarm. Emma, you need to call the police, Mrs. Finley whispered. And tell them what? That my 5-year-old son is telepathically communicating with a government experiment dog? They'll think I'm insane. Tyler looked up from his hot chocolate. Max says the police can't help. Some of the bad people wear police clothes too. Emma stared at her son. Tyler, what do you mean? The project wasn't just about dogs, Tyler explained patiently. It was about finding people who could see the heart glow too, like me. Max says they've been looking for children like me for a long time. The room fell silent, except for the ticking of Mrs. Finley's antique clock on the mantel. Emma felt the world tilting beneath her feet as the full implications of Tyler's words sank in. They weren't just after Max, they were after Tyler. We need to leave, Emma said suddenly, standing up. Right now. Mrs. Finley, I'm sorry to involve you in this, but... Nonsense, Mrs. Finley interrupted firmly. You're not going anywhere alone with that child. If these people are as dangerous as Tyler says, you need help. Mrs. Finley walked to an old wooden cabinet and pulled out a small, worn address book. My nephew Jake runs a security company. He's an ex-Marine, and he doesn't ask too many questions. Let me call him. While Mrs. Finley made her call, Emma tried to think clearly. They needed to get Max to safety. They needed to disappear for a while, and they needed proof of what had been done to the dog. Without evidence, no one would believe them. Tyler tugged on her sleeve. Mommy, Max wants to tell you something important. What is it, sweetheart? Tyler closed his eyes, his small face scrunched in concentration. When he opened them again, his voice was different, older somehow, and more urgent. There are others like Max, other dogs that escaped, and there are other children like me. The bad people have been taking them from their families and using them to find the dogs. Emma's knees nearly buckled. Taking children? Tyler nodded gravely. Max remembers a girl with yellow hair and a boy with dark skin. They could see the heart glow too, but after a while, they stopped glowing themselves. They became gray and empty. Mrs. Finley hung up the phone and turned back to them, her face grim. Jake's on his way. He says to stay away from windows and keep the doors locked. As if summoned by her words, there was a sharp knock at Mrs. Finley's front door. Through the window, Emma could see one of the men in dark suits standing on the porch. Mrs. Finley, the man called out, his voice carrying an official authority that made Emma's skin crawl. We know Emma Morgan and her son are here. We just want to talk. Tyler shook his head vigorously. Don't open the door. He's lying. He doesn't want to talk. He wants to take me away. Mrs. Finley looked at the man through her peephole, then turned back to Emma and Tyler, with steel in her elderly eyes. Well then, she said quietly, I suppose I'm about to become very hard of hearing. The knocking grew more insistent, but Mrs. Finley ignored it completely, moving around her kitchen as if nothing was happening. Emma watched in amazement as the 80-year-old woman transformed from a gentle neighbor into a protective fortress. Tyler, Mrs. Finley said calmly, would you like to see my basement? I have some very interesting old books down there, and a back exit that leads to the storm cellar. Tyler looked at Emma, then back at Mrs. Finley. Max says you used to be in the war. You know how to hide from bad people. Mrs. Finley smiled sadly. I was a nurse in Vietnam, sweetheart. I learned a lot about protecting people in dangerous places. As they followed Mrs. Finley toward her basement stairs, Emma realized that their quiet morning walk had launched them into something far bigger and more dangerous than she could have imagined. But looking at Tyler, speaking clearly, thinking strategically, somehow connected to an abused dog who might be the key to exposing a monstrous conspiracy, she also realized they might be the only ones who could stop it. The knocking at the front door stopped abruptly, replaced by the sound of footsteps circling the house. "They're checking the back door now," Tyler whispered, his hand finding Emma's in the dim basement light. Mrs. Finley led them to a narrow door behind her water heater. "This leads to the old root cellar. It connects to the storm drainage system. Jake will meet us there." As they slipped through the hidden door, Tyler looked back toward the stairs. "Max says this is the part where we become the hunters instead of the hunted," he whispered. And despite everything, Emma found herself believing him. The old storm cellar smelled of damp earth and forgotten time. Mrs. Finley led them through a narrow tunnel that seemed to stretch forever, illuminated only by her small flashlight. Emma carried Tyler when the ceiling became too low for him to walk upright, his small arms wrapped tightly around her neck. "Almost there," Mrs. Finley whispered, her voice echoing softly off the concrete walls. They emerged through a heavy metal grate into a wooded area behind the neighborhood, where a muscular man in his 40s waited beside a black pickup truck. His gray eyes were alert and intelligent, scanning their surroundings with military precision. "Aunt Rose," he said, embracing Mrs. Finley briefly, "what kind of trouble are we dealing with?" "The dangerous kind, Jacob," Mrs. Finley replied. "These are my neighbors, Emma and Tyler. They rescued an injured dog this morning, and now some very unpleasant government types are hunting them." Jake studied Emma and Tyler with a professional assessment. "Government how? FBI? ATF? Because my security clearance is still active, and I can make some calls." "It's more complicated than that," Emma said quietly. She looked down at Tyler, who was holding her hand and staring at Jake with that unnervingly direct gaze. "His heart glow is green like deep forest," Tyler announced suddenly. "He protects people because someone he loved couldn't be protected." Jake's expression shifted from professional courtesy to sharp attention. "What did he just say?" Mrs. Finley placed a gentle hand on Jake's arm. "Tyler is a very special child, Jacob. He seems to sense things about people." Jake knelt down to Tyler's eye level. "Son, how did you know about—" He stopped, shaking his head. "Never mind. We need to move. I saw 2 black sedans circling the neighborhood when I drove in." As they climbed into Jake's truck, Emma's phone rang. Dr. Chen's name appeared on the screen. "Emma, thank God." Dr. Chen's voice was strained when Emma answered. "They took Max. 3 men with federal badges came with a court order. I couldn't stop them legally, but I managed to remove the microchip before they arrived." Emma's heart sank. "Is he okay?" "I sedated him heavily before they took him. He won't be conscious for hours, which might be a blessing. But, Emma, there's something else. Before they took him, I ran some additional tests on his blood. There are synthetic compounds in his system, things that shouldn't exist in nature." "What kind of compounds?" "Neural enhancers, drugs that can amplify brain activity and sensory perception. The levels in his blood suggest he's been receiving regular injections for years." Tyler tugged on Emma's sleeve. "Max is sleeping, but he's not alone anymore. He can feel the other dogs." Emma covered the phone. "What other dogs, Tyler?" "The ones like him. They're all in the same dark place now, and there are children there too." Tyler's voice became very small. "They're all scared." Jake, who had been listening while driving, pulled over to the side of the road. "Ma'am, I need you to tell me exactly what's going on, because what your son just described sounds like a black site operation." Emma looked at Tyler, then at Mrs. Finley, then back at Jake. "I think my son can somehow communicate telepathically with animals. And I think the government has been experimenting on both animals and children to weaponize this ability." Jake was quiet for a long moment. "Military intelligence has been researching psychic phenomena for decades. Remote viewing, telepathic communication, enhanced intuition. Most of it was dismissed as pseudoscience, but there were always rumors about breakthrough programs that went underground." Max showed Tyler memories of a place where they tortured dogs to make them track people by their emotions, Emma continued. "And now Tyler says there are children being held in the same facility." Tyler looked up at Jake with those wise blue eyes. "The man who runs the bad place has a black heart, no glow at all. He steals the light from children and puts it into machines." Jake's jaw tightened. "Son, can you tell me anything else about this place? What it looks like? Where it might be?" Tyler closed his eyes and was silent for nearly a minute. When he opened them, his voice had that strange older quality again. Underground, lots of white walls and humming machines. There's a big silver door with numbers, 7741, and outside, there are tall trees and a lake that reflects the moon. Emma felt a chill. Tyler, those are the same numbers from Max's microchip. Jake started the truck again, his expression grim. I think I know where that might be. There's a decommissioned military research facility about 2 hours north of here. It was officially closed 10 years ago, but satellite imagery shows vehicles coming and going regularly. You think that's where they took Max? Emma asked. And where they're holding other children, Jake confirmed. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Tyler spoke up from the back seat. We're going to save them. Max says that's why he found me, so I could hear all their voices and help them get free. Mrs. Finley turned to look at Tyler. Sweetheart, that sounds very dangerous. Being scared and alone is more dangerous, Tyler replied with startling maturity. The children in the dark place are forgetting how to glow. If we don't help them soon, they'll become empty forever. Jake pulled into a truck stop and parked near the back of the lot. I need to make some calls. There are people I trust who might be able to help, but this is going to require careful planning. While Jake stepped outside to make his calls, Emma found herself really looking at Tyler for the first time since their ordeal began. Her quiet, delayed son had transformed into someone she barely recognized, articulate, confident, and somehow carrying the weight of knowledge that no 5-year-old should possess. Tyler, are you okay? Really okay? She asked gently. Tyler considered the question seriously. I'm different now. Since I touched Max, I can hear things I couldn't hear before, see things I couldn't see before. It's like someone turned on lights in my head. Are you scared? Sometimes. But Max says fear is just love wearing a scary mask. The children in the dark place need someone to take off their masks. Mrs. Finley reached back and squeezed Tyler's hand. You're a brave little boy, Tyler, but you don't have to save everyone by yourself. Tyler smiled, the first genuine child smile Emma had seen from him all day. I know, that's why Max sent Jake to help us, and why he made sure you were kind and brave too, Mrs. Finley. Jake returned to the truck, his expression serious but determined. I have a team coming together, former military, people who have seen things the government doesn't want to acknowledge. But I have to warn you, what we're talking about is essentially a rescue mission on a federal facility. There will be no going back after this. Emma looked at Tyler, who was watching her with complete trust. The morning had started with a simple walk in the woods, and now she was contemplating becoming a fugitive to save children she'd never met. But then she thought about all the years Tyler had been silent, trapped in his own mind, unable to connect with the world around him. And now, through his connection with a tortured dog, he had found his voice and a purpose that was larger than anything she could have imagined for him. What do you need from us? Emma asked Jake. Tyler is our key to finding the exact location of the children, but I won't lie to you. Bringing him close to that facility will put him in danger. They'll be able to detect his abilities just like Max could. Tyler spoke up confidently. I want to go. The children are calling for help, and I'm the only one who can hear them clearly. Jake nodded slowly. Then we go tonight. My team will create a distraction while we extract the children and any remaining animals. But, Emma, once we do this, you and Tyler will need new identities. The government won't stop looking for you. Emma felt the full weight of the decision settling on her shoulders. Their quiet life in Maple Hollow would be over forever. But looking at Tyler, really seeing him for the first time in his life, she realized that quiet life had been holding him back from becoming who he was meant to be. How many children are we talking about? She asked. Tyler closed his eyes again, his small face scrunched in concentration. 7 children and 12 dogs. They're all connected now, like lights in the dark. Then we save all of them, Emma said firmly. Jake smiled, the first warm expression she'd seen from him. I was hoping you'd say that. As they drove through the afternoon toward the rendezvous point where Jake's team was assembling, Tyler curled up in the back seat and appeared to fall asleep. But Emma could see his lips moving silently, and she realized he was having conversations with voices only he could hear. Mrs. Finley reached over and squeezed Emma's hand. You're doing the right thing, dear. Sometimes the most ordinary people are called to do extraordinary things. Emma squeezed back, drawing strength from the elderly woman's calm courage. "Mrs. Finley, you don't have to come with us. This isn't your fight." "Nonsense," Mrs. Finley replied briskly. "I've been fighting bullies for 80 years. I'm not about to stop now." Tyler's eyes opened suddenly, and he sat up with urgency. "Max is awake. They gave him medicine to make him mean, but he's fighting it. He's trying to protect the children." "Can you talk to him?" Emma asked. Tyler nodded, closing his eyes again. After a moment, he smiled. "I told him we're coming. He says the children are getting stronger because they know help is on the way. Their lights are getting brighter." Jake glanced in the rearview mirror. "Tyler, I need you to ask Max about security at the facility. Guards, cameras, anything that might help us get in and out safely." Tyler was quiet for several minutes, his small face serious with concentration. Finally, he opened his eyes. "Max says there are 12 guards at night, but only 4 stay awake. The rest sleep in a room with lots of monitors. There's a big fence with sharp wire, but there's a place where water goes under it that's big enough for people to crawl through." Jake whistled softly. "That's remarkably detailed intelligence." "Max is very smart," Tyler said proudly, "and he remembers everything because the bad medicine made his brain work too hard." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Emma realized they were no longer the same people who had started their morning with a simple walk in the woods. Tyler had found his voice and his purpose. She had discovered a strength she never knew she possessed, and together they were about to attempt something that would either save innocent lives or destroy their own. But looking at Tyler, confident, articulate, and glowing with purpose, Emma knew they had no choice but to try. "Max says we're going to win," Tyler announced quietly, "because love is always stronger than fear, even when fear has bigger teeth." And as they drove toward what might be the most dangerous night of their lives, Emma found herself believing that her 5-year-old son might just be the wisest person she'd ever known. The children and dogs in that dark facility were about to discover that sometimes salvation comes in the smallest, most unexpected packages. And sometimes, the most ordinary day can become the beginning of an extraordinary story that changes everything. Like this incredible journey, if it moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. Because stories like this remind us that heroes come in all sizes, and miracles often begin with a single act of kindness.